From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Let me start with something I know very little about. Russia, Ukraine, the U.S., NATO. I'm not going to pretend to know what I don't know. Here's what I do know, for sure. These things I know. War is never an answer. The very idea of a traditional land war with tanks and soldiers and guns and rockets couldn't be more ridiculous or absurd in any time, but especially in our time, in this modern time. That I know. I also know that the media, generally speaking now, the great amount of media that we're exposed to, which is commercial media, I know that they love war. I'm not saying that they're villains and that they literally love war. What they love is their bottom line, and war is great for their bottom line. They've got all their graphics departments and special effects departments very busy, working night and day for exciting logos and visuals. They're composing theme songs as we speak. The machinery is up and rolling. That I know for sure. Speaking of the media, which we do often around here, I'm going to recommend very highly that you take everything you hear from commercial media with a grain of salt, with a very skeptical ear. I'm going to encourage you once again to either listen or watch. I think listening is always preferable to watching. Listen to Democracy Now!, The War and Peace Report, with Amy Goodman, every day, Monday through Friday. Our flagship station, WXRW in Milwaukee, 104.1 FM, airs it every day at 9 a.m. and again at 3 p.m. And you can find it any time of day at democracynow.org. As I always say, if you're not catching Democracy Now!, you really don't know what's going on in the world. Not that they're the only source, but they're a great source. They're a great source for getting the anti-war side of things, the workers' side of things. So, just preaching this gospel again. Stay away from corporate media. Go to non-corporate media. Go to The Nation. Go to Jacobin. Go to Politico. There are places you can go. So please, please, don't form any big opinions based on commercial media. And when I say form opinions, I mean that very seriously. One thing that the founders got absolutely right when they were constructing our Constitution was to put the military under civilian control. We make the decisions. Now, I'm not saying that it's working right now. I'm saying it's a good system. And we need to keep trying to make it work. The citizens in a democratic government make the decisions about going to war. Again, there's the world we want and the world we have. And the world we have, that doesn't work so well. But the Constitution is designed so that the president is elected by the people. Now, of course, we have to get rid of the Electoral College. That's another story. Again, none of this is really working very well. But that doesn't mean we give up. So the president is elected by all the people. The members of the House and the Senate are elected by the citizens of each state and each district. And only the Congress can declare war. Only Congress can fund war. And both of them are supposed to reflect the will of the people. So each and every one of us has a voice in whether or not, or how, we react to any possible Russian invasion. This is not over our pay grade as citizens. No. Your need to know about what's going on, and your opinion about what's going on, and your voice about what we do about it, that's all legitimate. In fact, it's required of you as a citizen. If you want to live in a democratic state, small d democratic, then you have to participate, which means you have to know what's going on to the best of your ability. You have to form opinions. You have to voice those opinions. You have to make sure that your representative knows what those opinions are. This is not a television show. It's not an amusement. It's not a hobby. It's not an interest. It's our responsibility, each and every one of us as citizens. And if we don't take it seriously, then okay, then I guess you just want to give up. You want to give in to the fascists. I don't think you want to do that, do you? So I don't really know the answers. I'm trying to learn right now along with you. I'm trying to form my opinions about Ukraine. Here's another thing I know for sure. This I know. It's all about power and money. Russia wants power and money. Putin wants power and money. The United States wants nothing but power and money. Now we fall into this danger, especially if the bullets start flying. You can't say anything critical about the United States. You can't say anything critical about NATO. You can't say anything critical about Joe Biden unless you want to be accused of being an appeaser, an apologist, or even worse, siding with the so-called enemy. We have to resist that fear. We have to speak out. We don't have to have half-cocked opinions. We don't have to be that obnoxious guy at the end of the bar. But what we know, we share. And that's what I'm doing with you right now. These things I know for sure. I'm sharing what I absolutely know to be true. There's plenty of criticism to pass around. I'm no fan of Putin. Are you kidding? I'm no fan of the U.S. government and its role around the globe. Its unabashed pursuit of military and imperial power. The alliance with NATO. Sure, we want peace. Of course, I want peace. And this is their big claim to fame, that they've kept Europe at peace since World War II. Who can be opposed to that? But at the same time, who can deny that together, this sort of duopoly of imperialism in the post-war age, that is post-World War II, has seen the U.S. and NATO, and especially the U.S., intervene all around the world, organizing coups, assassinations, full-out wars against the rest of the world. Sure, we've kept Europe at peace, while any number of nations in the global south have been exploited and invaded, stolen of their resources, workers used as commodities, at best, slaves at worst. So, every voice in corporate media is going to want to turn you into a cheerleader. The great and virtuous U.S. and NATO versus the evil villain of Putin and Russia. It's about 1,000,000 times more complicated than that, and it blatantly, intentionally ignores the last 75, 80 years that got us here. So that's everything I know about Ukraine right now. And it's all about power, and it's all about money. Russia has no economy to speak of if you take oil out of the equation. I think they're legitimately scared for their own security, as is Europe. I'm not discounting the fear that they both have. I think that's pretty legitimate. I think it's warranted. They should be afraid of each other. But only in this context of money and power, which is why I'm all about small d democracy. It's why I'm about social anarchism. It's why I'm all about abolishing borders. You think the people of the United States, by and large, the people of Germany, the people of Ukraine, the people of Russia, I'm talking about the people, you and me, you think they want to go to war? You don't think the vast majority think this is absurd? It's crazy, the way nations behave. We're trapped in a system that has proven to be inefficient, abusive, deadly, a system based on finance, on trade, on exploitation of workers, on the theft of resources. This is the system we live in, and the one that benefits many Americans. It benefits many Europeans, and even those of us at the bottom of the rung. The elites have got us convinced that this is the only system. I said that we're trapped. Maybe I should amend that. Yeah, they've got us right now. We're hostages. We're captured. We're prisoners of this system. But being a prisoner doesn't mean you give up. You bang your metal cup across the bars. You plan your escape. You hatch schemes. Corporate capitalism has been exported around the globe. China depends on it. Russia depends on it just as much as the US and Europe depend on it. Most of the global South suffers because of it. And these are the reasons for war. There's nothing legitimate. There's nothing noble about it. So we could lose the forest of injustice for the trees of war. So many of us will put on our pleated skirts and shake our pom-poms when the bullets start flying, cheering for our side. Come on. It's just the latest in a daily deluge of evidence that global corporate capitalism is a fatal disease that we absolutely must eradicate. The resources of this earth are plentiful. Not one person on this planet should suffer for lack of food, housing, education, health. Scarcity is a lie. Competition is absurd. It's no way to run a world. I have little to no allegiance to the United States. I only have allegiance to the well-being of everyone, all citizens of Earth, all non-human citizens of Earth. There's nothing radical about this. It's about the most simple thing you can imagine. And it's absolutely doable. Don't let anybody tell you that it's not. We have to abolish profit. We have to abolish borders. We have to reorganize into a system that incentivizes cooperation and mutual aid. Our so-called leaders are just leading us off the cliff. Putin is a no-good authoritarian oligarch. Joe Biden has been wrong, just dead wrong, about virtually every foreign policy adventure in his 45-year career in Washington. NATO has a very nice mission statement, but at its heart, it's all about protecting what it's got. Centrist and even kind of lefty Democrats always point to Europe, and especially Scandinavia, as this great model that we should follow because they have a social safety net. Well, sure they do. But they're also rabid global corporatists gleefully stealing resources and exploiting labor from every so-called developing country. This is why oh man. Part of me is really glad I'm not very successful. You know, I don't have Joe Rogan's listenership. If I did, I wouldn't last an hour. They'd kill me. If I actually had success, if I had millions of listeners, and not only listeners, but if I was like a Joe Rogan or an Oprah, where my listeners were not only fans, but they were followers, and they actually listened to me and followed my advice and acted on it, my life wouldn't be worth a nickel. They'd kill me tomorrow. I remember when I was about 24 years old, maybe 23. I was working as an actor, performer, and between shows, I would support myself by getting freelance work as a graphic artist. So that was how I was cobbling together a living back in those days. And as a graphic artist, I worked for a woman who ran an agency, designed brochures and advertising and promotion and things like that. And I was hired as a freelance graphic artist. Well, her name was Marilyn. She became kind of a mentor of mine, and she loved giving me advice. And for the most part, she was a very nice person. We were friends. I was happy to take her advice. I was a young guy, you know. But the reason I bring her up, I remember we were having dinner once, and she was asking me about myself and what my goals were, and, you know. And I said that to her. I said, well, if I was ever really got successful at what I want to do, my life would be over. They'd kill me, like they killed Dr. King, like they killed Malcolm, like they killed Abraham Lincoln, you know. So I have mixed feelings about being successful. Yes, I'd like to be hugely successful. I would love for my ideas to be not only heard, but embraced and acted upon. But if that were the case, if I did reach that kind of level, I'm a dead man. She was just horrified at that statement. Had no idea what I was talking about. She just couldn't wrap her head around that. So I always ask you to, the standard requests. Hit the like button, hit the share button, help me get out there. You can still do that, but if it gets to be too much, I'll let you know. In the meantime, I think we've got some room to grow before I get into that danger zone. So, if you like the podcast, wherever you're listening, whatever platform you're listening on, go ahead and hit that share button if you would. It's really the way we get any decent distribution. It's kind of up to you. And if you really hate me, if you just kind of stumbled onto this podcast and you think I'm crazy and would like to see me dead, well, then you especially should share. Get me out there. Make me real popular. Because if I reach Joe Rogan levels, that's a suicide mission. All right, what else? In other news, the CDC is recommending that you don't pee in the pool. But then people who own and operate public pools are saying that go ahead and pee if you stay in your area. And then there are a whole lot of swimmers, especially parents of kids who are in the pool. A lot of them are saying, freedom. I can pee in the pool whenever and wherever I want. So can my kid. How dare you take away our God-given right to pee in the pool? Well, of course, this is just my little funny fake news. The CDC, before I go any further with this, the CDC didn't have anything to say about peeing in the pool. I'm hoping you're understanding my analogy here, aren't you? I don't have to. You're smart. I know you're smart. I don't have to explain things to you. So, we probably shouldn't pee in the pool. And peeing in your own little area, not sure if that's a winning strategy right there. And to yell freedom and to block highways for the right to pee in the pool, well, don't know what to say about that. Except, that does bring us to Windsor, Ontario. I visited Windsor once. I was in Detroit for reasons I don't need to get into. But we took a day, my two kids, they were young at the time, and their mom. The four of us drove across the now infamous bridge into Windsor. And it was the most remarkable experience. It really was like walking onto a movie set. I thought I'd crossed over into the land of Oz. The difference between Windsor and Detroit, it was just beautiful and clean, and it was shocking. Absolutely just shocking, the difference between the U.S. and Canada. What a nice, clean, lovely place that is. And so now, to see this little town in the news, the one I've always sort of associated with this idyllic Canadian model, to see it in the news now with this trucker boycott is very odd. Who knew there were that many crazy Canadians? I didn't know. Now, that's something that's important to note. 80% of Canadians are vaccinated. 90% of truckers, Canadian truckers, are vaccinated. So these protests, they may look large. I guess they're getting busted up now over the weekend here. It's a very tiny fraction of folks. Now, here's my take on the protests. First of all, I'm really envious. It's a nice job. For several weeks, they're shutting down whole economies. Factories are closing down. I mean, they're making a huge impact. There are real damaging costs to the U.S. and the Canadian economy. Goods can't get back and forth. Billions of dollars are being lost. People are being laid off. Factories are being closed. It's crazy the success they're having. For that, I admire them. That's how you do a protest. And believe me, there are plenty of important things to protest. I just spent my first segment talking about how we need to shut down this damn system and build a new one from the ground up. There's economic injustice. There's the climate crisis. There's racial injustice. There are really important things to protest and causes that would merit shutting down whole nations and whole economies, holding them hostage until they meet our demands. So that part about the Canadian protests, I admire. They've been nonviolent, unless you know something I don't know. I haven't heard about any violence. They've been disruptive, for sure, and something I feel compelled to remind us all occasionally. Nonviolence doesn't equal non-disruptive. No. Gandhi, Dr. King, no, they were all about disruption. They wanted to fuck things up. Sure they did. You can do that without being violent. And so, yeah, this big old trucker protest, blocking bridges, blocking whole downtowns, honking their horns, just making life a living hell for everybody. Yeah, I say more power to them. Well, I would, if they were protesting anything worthwhile. And so you have to put that into the equation as well. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of protest, of disruption. I'm a fan. But don't you think it ought to be about something worthwhile? Vaccine mandates for crossing a border? Really? That's what you're going to fight about? Your so-called freedom to run around and infect everybody? Your freedom to pee in the pool? Well, what is that? So, as much as I admire the success of this action, the reason is completely stupid. They're a bunch of dumbass crackers. What are they doing? If you're going to get my support for a protest, it kind of matters what you're protesting. So many people are so quick to accuse the other side of denying them their right to protest, their right to free speech. This is free speech. Yeah, you have the right to free speech, but your speech is stupid. It has no merit. It's illogical. It's absurd. It's selfish. It's dumb. That is part of the equation, you know. You have to factor into the equation what the protest is about. And it has to go both ways. Let's lay out a little, for instance, example, a little what-if example. What if, after the election of 2016, January of 2017, the Million Woman March or whatever, the Women's March on Washington, I forget what they called it exactly. You know, all the great pussy hats and all of that. What if that group had become violent and attacked the Capitol or attacked the inauguration? Now, I don't have any trouble condemning that sort of action. No, I'm an admirer of Dr. King, of Gandhi. Disruption, yes. Violence, no. So even though I supported the reason for them being in Washington, the reason for them marching against this monster that was just elected, and need I remind you, a lot of us knew, everybody marching in Washington that day knew what a monster he was. And of course, they've been proven right exponentially since. So I totally had their back. I was absolutely 100% in full support. If they, in great numbers, had stormed the Capitol building and started beating up people and threatening to hang people, yeah, I wouldn't have supported that. This is a tough bar that people have a hard time crossing. It's a block in their ability to use basic reasoning and logic. When the right-wingers were critical of the racial justice protests of 2020, they didn't just voice their political differences. They yelled loudly that people didn't even have the right to protest. In fact, went to the length in their Republican state legislatures, we talked about this the other day, where they're trying to make protests literally illegal. But they can't cross that logical Rubicon where you can support people's right to protest, right to assemble, even right to disrupt, and still disagree with their cause. That's exactly what I'm doing with the Canadian thing. I 100% support their methods. I think they're pretty damn good, actually. But the reasons are stupid. Well, let that be our last word for today. Oh, one other quick note. The Academy Award nominations were announced late last week. And so now this is the season for the next month or so. When are the awards? In March sometime? So you got about a month, maybe 5-6 weeks, I forget exactly, to see the movies if you're interested. And a lot of people do that. I confess I've done it myself. I take a look at the nominees. Maybe I'll check this one out. That's okay. I'm fine with that. The reason I bring it up is I have a recommendation for you. As long as you might be seeing a couple of extra movies over the few weeks here, I'd like you to consider this. There's a movie called For Your Consideration. 2006 came out. And it's one of those great movies from the team of Christopher Guest, Eugene Levy, and their stable of actors who put together A Mighty Wind, Best in Show, Waiting for Guffman, you know that group. They're all great movies if you haven't seen them. Well, yeah, Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show, A Mighty Wind, those are the three that come to mind. Are there others? There might be one or two more. They're damn funny. Eugene Levy and Christopher Guest are the primary writers, but then there's a ton of improv from the actors, and then they edit together these great movies. Well, they did one called For Your Consideration that didn't get too much attention. Best in Show and Waiting for Guffman seem to be everybody's favorites. I like A Mighty Wind. That's my favorite. Anyway, For Your Consideration is the story of this small independent movie that starts getting some Oscar buzz around it. Two or three of the actors are being rumored to be in line for a possible Oscar nomination. And so the movie we're watching takes place in the course of the production of the movie within the movie, and then the subsequent award announcements, which I won't do a spoiler alert here for you in case you haven't seen it. I just bring it up because I want to recommend it. I like to recommend good things to you. And this is a very good movie. It's a very funny movie. And it's called For Your Consideration. Came out in 2006. And in this Oscar season, it's just really a nice little diversion, a great little movie. You'll enjoy it. It's nice. It's funny. And it's got the whole crew. Christopher Guest, Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, Parker Posey. I forget the names of the others, but a lot of familiar faces. Fred Willard is hilarious. So there you go. There's your recommendation. Okay. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.